This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Not everyone is careful with your personal information, which might explain why there's a victim of identity theft every 5 seconds in the U.S. Fortunately, there's LifeLock. LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats to your identity. If your identity is stolen, a U.S.-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year by visiting LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
The NBA playoffs are here, and I'm getting my bets in on FanDuel. Talk to me, Chuck GPT. What do you know?
All sorts of interesting stuff, even Charles Barkley's greatest fear.
Hey, nobody needs to know that.
New customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
21 plus and present in Virginia. Must be first online real money wager. $5 deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expires 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome to our latest episode of the No Huddle Show, our Philadelphia Eagles podcast for NJ.com. This is Cayden Steele, and joining me as always will be my co-host, Brookover. Today, we're going to go over the schedule release, all 17 games, and give you our breakdown of what we think of each matchup. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Penco Tech. With 2 convenient campuses in Blackwood, New Jersey, and in Bristol, Pennsylvania, Penco Tech has provided comprehensive hands-on career training for more than 50 years, featuring programs in HVAC, electrical, plumbing, automotive technology, and more. With dedicated instructors and career placement assistants, Penco Tech can give you the skills and confidence to build a brighter future. Financial aid is available to those who qualify. Learn more and take the first step by going to pencotech.edu. Let's get right into it, Bob. The 17-game schedule for the Eagles came out yesterday, and it's a first-place schedule. It looks pretty difficult, playing 10 playoff teams from last year. No back-to-back home games on the schedule this year. What was your first thoughts on the schedule, Bob? Because to me, this looks like a gauntlet for the Eagles coming into this year.
My first thought was we got to go to Buffalo and 3 days after Christmas. That was my first thought. I haven't even looked this up yet, but I'm going to do it right now while we're talking. Buffalo temperature. I'm Googling it right now. Buffalo temperature, December 28th, 2024. Let's see what it was on that day. Let's see. Wow, it was actually unseasonably warm at plus 54 degrees that night. Wow. I'll take that. That would make me feel much better. But I was in Buffalo a couple years ago to cover the Giants in like November, and it was bitter, stupid, cold, and raining then. So I'm not looking forward to that. We also got a Green Bay in November. I look at the schedule from a selfish purpose. How cold am I going to be, or how hot am I going to be? And somehow we ended up back in Tampa in week 4. Last week it was oppressively hot that day. And I'd been in New Orleans 2 weeks before. It was also oppressively hot there. But from a football standpoint, I mean, we knew it was going to be a tough schedule before we knew when they were going to be playing. As you just pointed out, they got 11 games against 10 teams that went to the playoffs last year, and that alone was going to make it a tough schedule. You wrote the story last night about how they have no back-to-back home games, which seems kind of ridiculous to me. The other really difficult thing I see in this schedule is, so the Eagles play on a Monday. This to me is the most difficult thing they have to do. It's coming out of the bye, but they play on a Monday night after the bye in Green Bay, and then on a short week have to play the Lions at home. That seems like a particularly difficult part of the schedule. But we knew it was going to be tough. I think the beneficial part of this schedule for the Eagles is, I mean, as we sit here right now, the Commanders to me are the team that's the biggest threat to them to be NFC East champions. And whatever they've gone through the entire season, maybe they have a comfortable lead. Maybe they're neck and neck with the Commanders, but 2 of the last 3 games are against Washington. And, if they can get themselves right for that stretch run for those last 3 games, then they got a chance to win the division again.
Yeah, and Bob, I can't blame you on not wanting to be in Buffalo. That would be the week of my birthday. I'm December 27th, so I imagine I'll be flying out that day to Buffalo. And no better, birthday present than, potentially spending it in the snow and in cold weather up there. But I am
Yeah,
excited.
you're in the wrong business, Cayden. If you want your birthday off, I've
Yeah.
worked many a birthday in my lifetime.
It could have been a better city than Buffalo, though. But it is what it is. But
But
that'd be
when I covered baseball, it's the middle of summer. My birthday's in the middle of summer, and so I was always covering then, always away somewhere. And then when I switched to football, you'd think, oh well, it's the middle of summer, except it's the part of the summer right when training camp is opening. So happy birthday!
I appreciate it. But yeah, the Eagles' schedule is tough from top to bottom. Really, there are some games in there where you feel like they have the advantage, but 10 to 12 games in there, it seems like it's going to be tough.
Out of the shoot, out of their early schedule, particularly their first five, is very tough. I mean, Cowboys is a rivalry game. It's a game they probably should win, but I mean, on paper, they definitely should win. Then they got to go to KC. The Rams are coming in, and we know how the Rams feel about the Eagles. They still believe I think they still believe they won that game, the divisional round last game. I mean, they were a little more confident about what they did than what actually happened on the field. They did allow Saquon Barkley to put up like 7,000 yards of offense by himself in the two games they played them. I mean, it's not like they had a chance to beat them home anyway, and they didn't. Then they go to at Tampa Bay, and we know how that's gone for the Eagles in recent years. And then they play the Broncos, who, are an up and coming team. Interesting, Bo Nix, interesting game, but that's a tough 4 out of first 5 games. So, if they're sitting, 4-1 or 3-2 after that, they're probably in pretty good shape. So we'll see. A lot's being made about how they don't have back-to-back home games, but they don't have to go to back-to-back road games a whole lot either. They got to do that twice. But they knew that was going to happen. Probably the best thing about the schedule, one of the other good things about the schedule, although last year it turned out to be the perfect bye week after week 4, week 5 turned out to be the perfect bye week because the Eagles needed to get their act together. But this week it falls in week 9, which is the absolutely most middle part of the season you can get your bye. And so they do get a good bye week as well.
Yeah, and let's start out with that Cowboys game. When I saw that, it was week 1. I feel like I had so much anticipation for this game, thinking that maybe it would be the Lions, who they play later in the season on Sunday Night Football. Maybe it would be the Commanders. Maybe it would even be the new look Chicago Bears with Ben Johnson. Like, I had so much I guess juice for this game to see who they were going to play. I thought it would be exciting, and to me, I the rivalry aspect and the viewers. I know Dallas draws in a big audience, but I just don't know if I can get excited for this game. I don't view Dallas as a contender, even though they added George Pickens. They have so many holes on the defense. Brian Schottenheimer. I mean, no one wanted this guy to be head coach. I can't get excited for this game, but for you look at this matchup. What do you see? Is this deserving of a week 1 opening night game?
No, the NFL whiffed on this one badly. I mean, I went through and researched every kickoff. I think the kickoff game started in 2002, somewhere around it. But in 2005, that's when the NFL decided to turn the kickoff game into the showcase for the Super Bowl champion. Would get the home game on a Thursday night to kick off the season. That year, the Patriots played the Raiders, and the Raiders, they were under 500. I forget their exact record. I think they might have been 6-10, something like that, whatever it was. And then every year after that, there was never a losing team from the year before that played in that game until now. The Cowboys are the first losing team since the Raiders in 2005 to be the opposing team against the Super Bowl champion. And it makes no sense whatsoever. The other thing the league hadn't done in all those years, that 20-year stretch, is they hadn't put the Super Bowl champion up against a fellow division team, a team in their own division, except for twice. Oddly enough, it was the NFC East the other two times as well when the Giants opened in '08 and '12 and in 2012. They had to play. I think it was they played the Cowboys in '08 and the Commanders in 2012. But at least those were winning teams. But that's the only other time that the Super Bowl champion has had to open against the division opponent. It made no sense, that game. To me, the perfect opening day game for the Eagles was the Detroit Lions. But if you're going to open with a division team, from a scheduling and an excitement standpoint, well, why not the Commanders? They have Cayden Daniels. I mean, the league's I'm sure is looking at it this way. Well, we don't need to put Cayden Daniels against the Eagles in week one. He's an entity unto himself for us right now. So we want to get him in as many games as possible away from the Eagles, because we know we draw with the Eagles. They probably haven't drawn as well with the Commanders over the last however many years, because they haven't been a very sexy team, but they've become one now with Cayden Daniels. So I'm sure they're looking at it in that regard. But still, to me, I want a game with a lot of juice coming out of the chute, and the NFL whiffed on this one.
Yeah, and I've seen the argument that, it's probably what the NFL is thinking. I mean, you have the Cowboys, you draw in such a big audience. I mean, Dak Prescott hasn't been healthy, at the end of last season and at the end of most of seasons over the last, 3 or 4 years. The Cowboys have been a mess, particularly last year. Maybe the NFL is worried that that's going to happen again at some point around week 12, week 13. They're going to be out of the picture, and they want to get their viewers in now for the Cowboys, make people want to come in and view them before they get bad. But I can't be excited about that game, but I can be excited about week 2 against the Chiefs in Arrowhead, a rematch of Super Bowl 59. The Chiefs this offseason addressed the position that ultimately led to their demise in the Super Bowl, offensive tackle, drafting Josh Simmons in the first round, the Ohio State offensive tackle, signing Jalen Moore from the 49ers, who was kind of a backup tackle, but has shown some flashes as a starter when he has played. The Eagles obviously dominated them in that Super Bowl matchup. I'm wondering, will that be enough for the Kansas City Chiefs this time to play with the Eagles in terms of physicality up front?
Well, we're going to make one last point about that Cowboys game, and because you mentioned Dak Prescott. This is a fascinating stat to me. Since Jalen Hurts replaced Carson Wentz as the starting quarterback with 4 games left in the 2020 season, the Eagles played the Cowboys 9 times, and Hurts and Prescott have only faced each other 3 times in that span. So that tells you how seldom that's happened. So to your point, they at least, in theory, as long as these guys remain in the bubble wrap they usually do in the preseason, we'll at least get a rare Jalen Hurts versus Dak Prescott matchup in this game. But anyway, moving on to the Chiefs, you know how excited I am about this game. I wrote a whole story about. I do this fun facts column every year. I did it when I was covering the Giants, and I've done it the last 2 years with the Eagles. I think I even used to do it going back into the 2000s when I covered the Eagles for the Inquirer. I just have a lot of fun looking this kind of stuff up. To me, the Eagles and Chiefs have become one of the marquee rivalries in the history of the league, and certainly the marquee rivalry in my mind, AFC versus NFC. I go back to the 70s when the Cowboys and Steelers, when I was a kid, that was it seemed like they were playing each other every year in the Super Bowl. They weren't, but they were facing each other a lot, and they were, the two teams in the league. And then you had the 49ers and the Cowboys, but they weren't AFC, NFC rivals. The Eagles, and I'm not sure how you never hear this, but the Eagles and Chiefs have set a record. They set it last year when they played in the Super Bowl, when they played for the 4th straight year in a row. Now they're going to play for a 5th straight year in the row. Never happened before ever in the NFL. The AFC NFC rivalry started in 1970 when the leagues merged, the AFL and NFL merged, and the schedule's been designed ever since then to make sure these teams don't play each other in back-to-back years. And they rarely have. 3 times was the most. The Raiders and Vikings played each other 3 seasons in a row, with the Super Bowl mixed in there. And then the Steelers and Cowboys did play each other 3 years in a row. This is the first time, 5 years in a row. The other amazing part of this whole thing to me is that the Eagles and Chiefs also have the longest stretch. There was a time where you wonder whether these two teams were in the same league. They went from 1972 to 1992 without playing each other at all, and now they just can't stop playing each other. We obviously had a great Super Bowl between them 2 years ago when the Chiefs won really on their final possession. Got the field goal, got the penalty to give them the field goal to win that game. Then the Eagles went to the Chiefs the next year, pulled out a game, and we have Nick Sirianni leaving the field and screaming at Chiefs fans. You got the Andy Reid factor here, and plus the coaches that he has on his staff, Steve Spagnuolo. I mean, to me, this has become certainly a top 3 all-time NFL rivalry. We get it in week 2 right out of the chute. I almost wish it was a little later in the season, but anytime these teams play, it's a great rivalry, and I'm looking forward to that one big time.
Yeah, I am too, and I would still give the Eagles the edge in this game. Just it's way too early, but I still think the Eagles overall have a better team. I'm not sure if a rookie offensive tackle coming off a patellar tendon surgery is going to be ready at that point. I don't know what Jalen Moore is, but I will say Kansas City will probably have Rashee Rice potentially back at this point. Xavier Worthy, Marquise Brown. They drafted a wide receiver in the 4th round, Jalen Royals, who a lot of people like. I think one of the problems with Kansas City last year, not only the offensive line, overall, I don't think they were explosive enough on offense. That could change this year, especially if Rashee Rice is back.
Well, you know what they have bigger than all those things?
Patrick Mahomes.
A very motivated Patrick Mahomes, I'm sure, and a very motivated Andy Reid, and maybe even more motivated than those two will be Steve Spagnuolo, whose defense was steamrolled in that game. So the Chiefs will show up.
Yeah, you wonder how many more times. Bob, we talked about them playing the Super Bowl 2 years ago, then last year, the regular season in 2023. But just because of this budding rivalry, and if you look at both conferences, as talented as Buffalo and the Ravens are, and other teams in that conference, no one, even in the years they seem like they're going to catch Kansas City, is ever able to. And then the Eagles on the NFC side have the ability to be contenders for the next 5, 6, 7 years, especially with Jalen Hurts at quarterback. The young defense. You wonder how many more times these teams are going to meet, or how many more times these two teams are going to meet in the Super Bowl.
They've won 5 of the last 8 Super Bowls combined. So in the midst of that, the Eagles have lost 1, and the Chiefs have lost 3. Correct? Yeah, 20 or 2.
2. They lost to Tampa and then the Eagles.
Okay, right. They lost 2. So they've won a combined 5 of the last 8, and it seems like one or the other has been there every year for the last 8 years, and that's true except for 2 of the last 8 Super Bowls. I think one or the other has been there. It's a great rivalry, and I'm serious when I tell you, when you think about the 70s, the Steelers and Cowboys, it just seemed like they were always there. And to think that the Eagles are part of something similar to that, it was something you never would have thought happened when I was a kid, that the Eagles would be the team in the midst of a rivalry, AFC, NFC rivalry, but they are there now.
Yeah. Maybe the best NFC rivalry going forward, or potentially it feels like another team that the Eagles play a ton, is the Rams. Have played them 3 times in the last 2 years, have beaten them every single time, 23-14 in 2023. And then last year, a blowout victory in the regular season. Then in the divisional round last year, the final score was close and it came down to the wire. But like you said, Bob, Saquon, big run. They had a 2-touchdown lead. The Rams come back and make it interesting with Matthew Stafford. But they're going to play him at home again, week 3 at 1 p.m. in Philly. What's your thoughts on another matchup against the LA Rams?
I have several thoughts about it. If the Rams don't stop the run, it's not going to matter. But I mean, Saquon just absolutely obliterated them in the two games last season. Um, uh, I, I love this stat, and Saquon talked about it last year. So the Eagles' playoff win over the Rams, even their postseason record 2-2 against the Rams. The Eagles hadn't beaten the Rams in the playoffs, however, since 1949 when they won their second straight NFL championship game with a 14-0 shutout at Shibe Park. Steve Van Buren ran 31 times for 196 yards that day. And the Rams, who had Norm Van Brocklin at quarterback, uh, ran 24 times for 21 yards. I'm sure you know this. Van Brocklin was a rookie that season. 11 years later, he led the Eagles to their third NFL championship. Anyway, Saquon talked about this after the game last year, after he ran for 205, after earlier in the year running for 10,760 in LA. He talked about how he had looked up before the game what the playoff record was for rushing yards in a game. And sure enough, he said it a couple days later with his 205 yards against the Rams. Again, you're right. This has become an interesting little rivalry. And the Eagles have several of these on their schedule. We already mentioned the Chiefs, and we're going to mention some more as we go down this list here about some, and that becomes part of just being a really good team, because you become for the longest time everybody was the Dallas Cowboys rival because they were so good for so long, and the Eagles have kind of become that. Jared Verse he's convinced that the Rams are the better team. Well, he's going to get another chance to prove that, and he was great in that game. He was great in that game. He was great theater, and he was great, and he played a great game. He started by talking trash to Jalen Carter and the Eagles fans before the game started. We don't get much juice on opening night, maybe as much as we'd like with the Cowboys. Oddly enough, the team that's most hated in this city forever. But we get lots of it with the second home game of the season with the Rams coming in. I'm looking forward to that one a lot. I still think the Eagles will win it because I still think they're going to be able to run the football. And I think the Rams have probably pissed the Eagles off a little bit because they have just talked so much smack about how, they should have beaten them. Although the last time we had a similar situation to this was the 49ers, who felt like they should have won the NFC Championship game, but they were hurt. They lost all their quarterbacks, and then they came in the next year and smacked the Eagles around at the link. So we'll see.
And Bobby, it's a fair point about the Rams stopping the run. They're the one franchise still. The Eagles now are valuing linebackers, but the Rams are still devaluing that position. Like Omar Spates is a great story from Philadelphia. He started in that playoff game. He's probably their best linebacker, and he was an undrafted free agent last year. They just don't invest in the middle with their linebackers. Their safeties are kind of average with Cameron Curl and Cam Curl and Cameron Kitchens. So overall, this Rams defense, even though the front is exciting with Jared Verse and Braden Fisk and Kobe Turner and Byron Young and all those different guys, they drafted Josiah Stewart in the third round. I do still have questions with the linebacker room, the cornerback room too, with Akella Witherspoon potentially being their best corner and Darius Williams. They really don't have a great defense overall. And then offensively, that is where they are dangerous. But I still think the offensive line has holes. But even saying that, I do think they have a shot of winning this game. I actually predicted them to win it because maybe it's a little bit of me believing in luck runs out eventually. And it seems like the Eagles have had the Rams number dating all the way back to even when Carson Wentz was the quarterback, and Carson Wentz got hurt in that game, but they found a way to win that game next year with Nick Foles. They found a way to win that game in 2018. I feel like they've had the Rams number forever, and maybe that won't change. So maybe it's a little bit of luck, but it's also, I believe Devontae Adams is a significant upgrade over what Cooper Kupp is currently. I think the offense is going to be really good. They run the ball well, and I believe it could be the year they pull off the win, but maybe I'll have a little bit of regret about it. But let's go to the other side of things. Talk about a team that has had the Eagles number in the Buccaneers. Got to go back down to Tampa Bay again. Remember last year, Bob, walking around the stadium, trying to find the press box, sweating my butt off for like 10 minutes until I found the location. So it's going to be hot. I'm not looking forward to that. I'm sure. And the Eagles were drained, tired last year from the heat. They talked about it after the game. Week 4, same week as last year. Got a rematch here.
Yeah, I mean, I think you referred to it in your picks as the Eagles' kryptonite, and they have been the Eagles' kryptonite. And it goes back. The Eagles really were dominating the series at one time, but it kind of goes back to that 2002 NFC Championship game. I guess it was actually played in 03, but when the Bucks closed down the vet, and then they came in the next year and they opened the link by beating them up again. And it seems like they've been beating them up ever since. Before that, the Eagles had kind of had their number in playoff games. Todd Bowles is a terrific defensive coach. Baker Mayfield has played really well against the Eagles. The last 2 games in which it was the playoff game, and then last year when they blew him out, he had a 108.7 passer ratings. He's thrown 5 TDs without an interception. He's played really well. They've played really well. They've been outscored 55-25 their last 2 trips down there. I have the Eagles winning this game, actually, and I just think I know the Bucks are good, and they've won. They're defending division champions, and they're an interesting team to me because while the NFC North and NFC East have to play each other this year, they get to play the West maybe a little easier for them, and they're a team that can surprise people. But I, for some reason, I think the Eagles are finally going to go down there. The heat was definitely a factor in that game last year, but there were other issues beyond that. But they just jumped all over the Eagles from the start, and the Eagles they kind of sort of got back in the game, but couldn't fit. And then Jalen Hurts lost a fumble. I do think the Eagles are a better team than the Bucks, but I think the Bucks are a really underrated, well-run organization with a really good, smart head coach.
I agree with you though. I predicted them to win. Overall, they're a better team than the Bucks, and I get the record and recently with the playoff loss and at the end of the 2023 season, and then losing last year in week 4. But the Eagles have never been healthy or have been on a good path when they've played the Bucks. And who says they will be this time? I mean, maybe they're struggling and they're injured again. But if the Eagles are healthy and they're playing well, they're a better team than the Buccaneers. And I know that's easy to say, but I mean, last year they didn't have Lane Johnson, they didn't have AJ Brown, they didn't have Devontae Smith. In the playoffs, they didn't have AJ Brown and Reed Blankenship, and they were just struggling. The Buccaneers are a good team, but I just think that the Eagles are playing at their best. It won't be a game that the Buccaneers will be able to pull off this time. And maybe Todd Bowles does have Jalen Hurts' number, but I feel like we have to give Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, and Devontae Smith to truly find that out. But now let's go into the October slate here. I'm going to mention all 4 games here. We can talk about whatever ones we want to talk about. But week 5, we got the Denver Broncos in Philadelphia, 1 p.m. game. And then 4 days later, the Eagles go to MetLife to play the New York Giants on Thursday Night Football. Who knows who the quarterback will be, whether that's Jackson Dart or Russell Wilson or even Jameis Winston. And then they have a 10-day break before they go to Minnesota for a tough matchup against a Minnesota team that's very good but has an inexperienced quarterback in J.J. McCarthy for week 7. And then back again at home, week 8, 1 p.m., again against the New York Giants. Bob, what about that 4-week stretch there stands out the most to you, and what matchup are you most looking forward to?
I think I'm looking forward to seeing Bo Nix play, coming in and playing because he, other than Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix was the best rookie quarterback in the league last year. We're talking about the Giants. They could have had Bo Nix and they passed. And now they got Jackson Dart. I'm not sure they got the better end of the deal there. But I am looking forward to seeing him. This to me is a 4-game stretch. Bo Nix, I was going to point out, Nix's 29 touchdown passes last year, second all time for a rookie behind Justin Herbert's 2020 for the Chargers, had 31. But this is a 4-game stretch for the Eagles. I think they can go 4-0. And depending on what they've done before that, but they, at home against Denver, Bo Nix is fine, but I still think the Eagles win this game. The thing, maybe more than Bo Nix, that the Broncos had last season is a terrific defense. They finished third in points allowed last season. But I'm looking forward to seeing the Broncos. They rarely come to the Link. I think this is their third appearance in 23 years at the Link. So looking forward to that game. The Giants, again, the NFL whiffed last year when they didn't put the Eagles Giants in prime time when they returned with Saquon for the first time. They missed some good theater in the parking lot, and then they missed Saquon just torching his old team. Would have been a good national television story. They whiffed on that. I think the Giants are an improved team, but I still think Saquon's going to be motivated as could be to beat them, and they still haven't figured out their quarterback issue in my estimation. There was a time where Russell Wilson, the Eagles couldn't beat Russell Wilson, but they finally did last year, and he's not going to beat him. And I don't think we're going to see Jackson Dart that early in the season. I think he sits longer than that. Again, you mentioned J.J. McCarthy's in Minnesota. The Vikings are a very talented team. I don't know what to make of J.J. McCarthy. I really don't. I didn't love him in college because I just thought he had I looked at him like a lot of the Alabama quarterbacks over the years. He had so much talent around him, both on offense and defense, that he couldn't help but win. I'm not saying he didn't play a part in it. We use the term game manager a lot, and he was an incredible game manager his last year in college, but I don't think he's going to be able to manage beating a Vic Fangio defense in his first year. And then after that, they come home and play the Giants again. They win that game in my mind, and then they have their bye. So, I think the Eagles, should go 4-0 in that stretch.
McCarthy is truly a mystery. The one preseason game, and it's preseason, so we have to keep that in mind. But he looked really good when he got his knee hurt in that game. I don't know what he is. He was one of the more controversial draft prospects last year. Some people loved him, some people didn't like him, and it was a big projection because Michigan didn't ask him to throw the ball a ton, and he had Blake Corum running behind him and a good offensive line, and everything was kind of made easy for him, but he does have the physical tools, and his head coach Kevin O'Connell is a really good mind when it comes to quarterbacks and offense. And Minnesota, to me, has the most boomer bust potential in the NFL. If he plays, to a level that's higher than even Sam Darnold played last season, and I'm not saying that will happen, but it's within the range of possibilities. And if he does, the Vikings have, on paper, offensively, especially with the two wide receivers and Jefferson and Addison, the offensive line, they signed Will Fries and Ryan Kelly from Indy to improve the interior, then drafted Donovan Jackson, the guard from Ohio State. And then defensively, they have a ton of talent, especially with their edge rushers with Grenard and Van Ginkel. And this is a team that could compete for a Super Bowl, but it's really dependent on J.J. McCarthy. And even if he's good, this is a game where I feel like Vic Fangio's experience going against younger quarterbacks, he could take advantage of a guy like McCarthy and force him into some mistakes. The Giants games, I do think the Giants are better, and maybe they do sneak a win against the Eagles in an upset, but I don't feel overall good about the Giants, even though Abdul Carter is exciting. Then going back to week 5, I think this is the game, to me, that I'm most excited about because I truly think Denver is a sneaky Super Bowl contender. And you mentioned it, Bob, because of the defense. You added Dre Greenlaw, and you added Tuluna Hafagana from the 49ers. Both players from the 49ers. And then just even building on the defense last year, you draft Jahade Barron in the first round, the corner from Texas. Bo Nix was impressive last year. You drafted R.J. Harvey, the running back, out of Central Florida in the second round. They should be able to run the ball better this year. I think it's a tough game for the Eagles because I think Denver can match them stylistically more than most teams can in the NFL. And I actually had Denver winning that game. I did predict the Giants in our predictions, but I don't feel great about that. That was maybe me trying to be a little too much different. I don't think they're going to win every game that they're supposed to. I don't feel great about the Giants and Brian Dable and Joe Shane though, so I'm regretting that as we speak. But let's get into the November games. You had them going 4-0, so the Eagles are pretty good right now, Bob. They're in a good place. They're gonna have their bye week. They're gonna get a week of rest, but then they're gonna have to travel to Lambeau to play the Packers on November 10th for a Monday Night Football game, and then the next week, Sunday Night Football against the Lions at home, and then all traveling to Dallas on November 23rd for another division game against the Cowboys. Who knows whether Dak Prescott's available or not at that point, or what the Cowboys are, to be honest. And then they wrap up November, Black Friday, day after Thanksgiving against the Chicago Bears. Are they going 4-0 in this stretch as well?
No, they're not. I have them losing to the Packers. I mean, the Packers are another team. Can't wait to get the Eagles again. Played them 2 tough games last year. Another team this has kind of developed into a real rivalry. They've seen each other a lot in the last few years. And the Packers obviously made news in the offseason by being the team to propose the banning of the tush push, which I think is going to happen in about 6 days, 5 or 6 days. So I think they're going to be ready to play this game. Lambeau is a tough place to play. I like the Packers in this one. And then you go back to where they have to come. They do get the Lions at home, but they get the Lions at home on short rest after a Monday night game. So I mean that also a tough game. I have the Eagles winning this game, but certainly it's going to be a wild game. Maybe as much a game as I'm looking forward to as anybody. Again, I think this should have been the opening night game, but can't wait to see Goff and the one thing that took a real close look at the Lions. Did a whole story on whether they're the biggest threat to the Eagles in the conference because they were the best team in the regular season last year. They're going to get Aiden Hutchinson back, which will give them a different look, but I'm still not sure. They really crumbled, and a lot of it had to do with injuries, but they really crumbled down the stretch last year, and with it culminating with the lopsided loss to the Commanders in the NFC divisional round. I still think the Eagles are better than them. To me, the other big factor for the Lions that they have to overcome is especially losing offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, who's the Bears head coach now, but also losing defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn to the Jets. Those, maybe more than anything, those might be the 2 biggest losses of any team in the NFL. I know the Eagles lost their offensive coordinator too, but they still have some continuity there with Patillo coming in to replace Kellen Moore. We go down at Dallas. I don't know what the Cowboys are going to be. If the Cowboys are good, that's going to be a fascinating game at that point in the season, right before their annual Thanksgiving game. But I just think the Cowboys are going to struggle. I don't love anything they've done. I don't love George Pickens. I'm just not sold on the Cowboys. I think their offensive line is a shell of what it used to be. And then they close out November with the Bears. Again, I think I don't know what to make of Caleb Williams. He's obviously got Ben Johnson on his side now, but I actually think the Eagles win that game handily. So we'll see. But that's how I look at the November stretch.
The Bears and the Lions are the 2 games I'm most looking forward to, and that's not to say Green Bay can't be a solid team. I just looking at Green Bay though, I find them to be a little bit boring. Matthew Golden should make them more explosive on offense, but I'm not really a believer in Janie Reed, even though he went off against the Eagles last year in week 1. Romeo Dobbs, the Tavian Wicks. I really don't think they have a great offense still. It really depended on how good Matthew Golden is, and although I think Golden is solid, I'm not sure if he's like a true number one. They run the ball well, but even then, going on defense outside of Jair Alexander, who has been in trade rumors all offseason and not even 100% certain he'll be back. The cornerback room isn't really good. I think Green Bay honestly finishes last in that division. The Eagles win that game. In the two tougher teams in the NFC North, in the slate to me is Chicago and Detroit. You mentioned the loss for the Lions of Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, and those are huge as well. From a personnel standpoint, they're still really good, especially on offense. The offensive line, the weapons that they have. Defensively, they're pretty good as well, especially in the secondary, getting G.J. Reed, who I think is an upgrade over Carlton Davis. But the one concern I have for Detroit, you mentioned Aiden Hutchinson, and you saw the impact that it had that when he went out. I know it was more than just him, but he was their top pass rusher, their best defensive player, and they really didn't have another pass rusher. They added Zadarius Smith in the middle of the year, and he was solid, but he's still a free agent now, but he wasn't the answer. And Detroit has done nothing across from Aiden Hutchinson to really upgrade. I mean, they have Marcus Davenport. They drafted a guy in the 6th round from Boise State. That room, to me, if Aiden Hutchinson doesn't come back the same or struggles with injuries again, it's going to be a problem. And Brad Holmes has talked about it all offseason. He doesn't really get why people come at him for not having a second premier edge rusher. But to me, it's important. I think it's something he's undervaluing. He drafted Tyreek Williams, the defensive tackle from Ohio State, in the 1st round, which I thought was a questionable pick when there were some edge rushers still left on the board, like Donovan Ezeraku. I could think that could be the thing that ultimately hurts Detroit is they don't have enough pass rush to get after Jalen Hurts in that game. So I think the Eagles will win as in a tight, fun game that could be a preview of the NFC Championship. And then Chicago, yeah, I don't know if they're going to be either, but there's a chance that they're really fun with Caleb Williams. The reason Ben Johnson is such a big loss for Detroit is because he's so good at scheming things, which will make you think that Caleb Williams will take that next step potentially. They have a ton of weapons already with Roma Dunze and DJ Moore. Then they go add Luther Burden and Colson Loveland in the draft. Chicago will be fun, but I still think they're a year away from competing with the Eagles. Now, we get into December here. Let's start with the first 2 games before we wrap up with the final 3. 2 AFC West opponents. We got the Chargers on Monday Night Football, December 8th at SoFi Stadium, and then December 14th back in Philadelphia at the Link against the slightly improved, I would say, Las Vegas Raiders with Pete Carroll.
Yeah, I liked my fun facts about the Chargers. This is the 16th time they've played the Eagles and faced the Chargers, and I found it fascinating. The same 2 coaches have never faced each other in the 16 times they've played each other. That'll hold this year. Also, the fun fact was the first time the Chargers ever beat the Eagles was in 1980. I think it was the Eagles' first or second loss of the season when they went to the Super Bowl. And can you tell me how the Eagles lost that game?
I don't know.
They lost it on a field goal with 4 seconds left in the game, and it was kicked by a future Wheel of Fortune host. And the answer is not Vanna White, and you cannot buy a vowel.
You got 2 things I'm terrible at: old football history and Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah, well, you hit bankrupt here. I'll give you the answer. The answer is Rolf Panerska hit a 42-yard field goal with 4 seconds left to beat the Eagles, 22-21. I love that little bit of fun history. The Eagles have also never beaten Jim Harbaugh. He was 2-0 against them when he was with the 49ers. One of the Eagles' worst losses in history was a home game. They blew a 20. The Phillies got eliminated by the Cardinals later that night in the NLDS, But earlier that day, the Eagles had a 20-point lead against the Chargers in 2011, or the 49ers in 2011 with Harbaugh as the coach. They blew that lead. It was really interestingly in Philadelphia sports history that was the end of the Phillies run as in the Ryan Howard, Chase Utley, Jimmy Rollins era. And it was also really the beginning of the end of the Andy Reid era in Philadelphia, because they didn't make the playoffs that year, and that was the dream team year. And the following year, they won, I think, 3 or 4 games, and Andy was fired. As far as this season goes, the Chargers are a fascinating team. A tough team they allowed the fewest points in the league last year. They have a terrific quarterback in Justin Herbert. I think one of the things that Jim Harbaugh needs to do is let Justin Herbert become more a part of the offense. He's always, the Harbaughs like to play smash mouth, run the football, play great defense football. They both are the same way, John and Jim, and they've both pretty much been great at it. I think if you try to play that style with the Eagles, you're going to lose. But I can see the Chargers winning this game. I think it's a tough game. The Eagles are coming off 2 back-to-back games and short rest. One of them against the NFC North, 2 of the NFC North best team, and they will have been at Dallas, the previous Dallas and Chicago. I'm sorry, I messed the schedule up there a little bit. It's a tough game for the Eagles. I see the Eagles losing that game. And then Vegas, I don't see the Eagles losing to Vegas. To me, the formula for rebuilding your team is not to bring in the 74-year-old head coach. When Pete Carroll coaches on opening day, he's going to become the oldest coach in NFL history. He's been a great coach in his career at both college and NFL level. I think he's Hall of Fame worthy. But it's just, to me, that's not the way you rebuild your program. And then on top of that, you're bringing in a 34-year-old quarterback in Geno Smith. Again, he's been a terrific story for the NFL. He barely played for most of his career, was a bust with the Jets. Interestingly, with him, he's never faced the Eagles in his career. It's going to be his first meeting against the Eagles. I think the Eagles win this game in a blowout.
Neither team, I'm really too high on. Maybe I should be higher on the Chargers because they did draft from Aaron Hampton, who I really like. Jim Harbaugh is a really good coach. I still question how much potential that wide receiver room has. That was the problem last year. They weren't really explosive on offense. They only really had one go-to option in Lam McConkey. Bob, you make a fantastic point that Jim Harbaugh kind of treats Justin Herbert like he's J.J. McCarthy, or at least he did last year at various points. And I know they drafted Trey Harris in the 2nd round. They brought back Mike Williams in free agency after he spent a year away with the team with the Jets and the Steelers. But overall, offensively, I still think they lack firepower. Defensively, there's some pieces I like, and Jesse Minter is a really good defensive coordinator, but the pass rush, to me, is questionable. Khalil Mack is getting up there. And outside of him, I don't feel great about their depth at that position. The secondary, to me, still has question marks. I mean, the young guys really stepped up for them last year, and Tarheeb Still and Cam Hart. But cornerback is such a volatile position. Those guys go up and down every single year. Not really sure how much confidence I have that, 2 5th-round picks are going to continue to go upwards. So I do think the Eagles will win this game. Probably won't be easy because the Chargers are well coached. But my last memory of the Chargers is them getting stomped by the Houston Texans, who weren't very good last year. And I'm not sure if they just did enough in the offseason to improve. The Raiders, I'm a little higher on than you, but still, defensively, I don't think they did enough. Outside of Max Crosby and like Christian Wilkins, I really don't like their defense. But I think offensively, they have enough to be interesting with Ashton GNT and Brock Bowers and the rest of that core. But I agree that it's a weird philosophy because Pete Carroll's like a win now type of coach, and I still think they need 2 more years. So I think the Eagles go 2-0 in that stretch. Then we get this final 3 weeks here, Bob, and this is where it gets difficult. Washington away at Washington, Week 16, and then Buffalo, a potential Super Bowl preview in potentially snowy weather, and then back at home against Washington Week 8. That screams difficult.
It does. I'm gonna give you some fun facts again because I enjoy the fun facts, and I'm gonna give you some trivia again.
All right.
So Cayden Daniels was the Washington was the offensive rookie of the year, third one in Commanders history, first since Robert Griffin III, aka RJ3 in 2012. The first part of the trivia question is how many Eagles have won Offensive Rookie of the Year awards?
Mm. Uh,
Dates to 65, I think.
Let me guess one.
That would be one too many.
Ooh,
They've,
0.
they've never had an Offensive Rookie of the Year. Closest they've ever come was Keith Jackson in '88 and Charlie Young in '73. Were both finished second. Uh, Keith Jackson finished second to John Stevens, who I barely remember, and Young finished second to Chuck Foreman, who was a great back for the Vikings. And then the defensive rookie of the year, the last defensive rookie of the year for the Commanders was Chase Young in 20. How many defensive rookie of the years have the Eagles had?
Two?
That would be two too many.
0. Wow.
The Eagles and the Jaguars are the only teams that never have either an offensive or defensive rookie of the year. Here nor there, as far as how that impacts this season's games, but I do think the Commanders can win this game in DC or in Landover, Maryland. Their home game. I do think they will win it. I think it's going to be a tough place for the Eagles to play. I love the addition of Deebo Samuel, mostly because he was a thorn for the Eagles when he was with the 49ers. Now, he's got to be healthy, but I think he adds a dimension to the Commanders' offense that maybe they didn't have a year ago. If you have a concern about the Commanders, it's on the other side of the ball. I'm still not. I know their defense isn't as good as the Eagles, and I don't think they're as good a team. But I can see the Commanders winning this game in DC. The middle. Did you talk about the Bills? Did you want to talk about the Bills too right now?
Yeah.
The middle of that game. Really, really tough game for the Eagles. I could see the Eagles losing to the Commanders and Bills back to back here, going into their home game finale against the Commanders, needing a win to clinch the division. Because I think people look a lot at what the Eagles have to face this year and say, "Wow, that's just a really tough schedule." And it is, but Washington's also facing a really tough schedule after having one of the easiest schedules in the league last year. And I can see the Eagles getting to 11-6 by winning the last game of the season. Here's something. It was talked about a lot with the Rams, how Saquon Barkley ran over the Rams, but he had 100 yards in all 3 games against the Commanders last season, 414 total, 7 touchdowns on 70 carries in the 3 games they played against the Commanders. He also had 3 catches for 56 yards against them, averaged 5.5 yards a carry. So the Commanders, like the Rams, could not stop Saquon Barkley. And I still think the Eagles are going to win the NFC East, and I think they're going to. We've had a lot of games, mostly against the Giants, it seems, in recent years that just haven't mattered that much the last week of the season, or they have, but only loosely and only to one of the 2 teams. And I think this game, I think we could see these 2 teams tied coming down to the last week of the season, and the Eagles win the division by beating the Commanders the last week of the season.
Yeah, I went with the 1-1 split as well because of the Jayden Daniels factor. But I will say I can see the Commanders potentially regressing, and I get what they did They added Debo Samuel. Then they traded for Laramie Tunsil. And if both those moves work out and both those players reach their ceilings, um, yeah, this team will be better. But at the same time, Debo Samuel hasn't been the same player in 2 or 3 years. Um, and Laramie Tunsil led the league with 19 penalties last season and did not play to the level that he has in past years. So both of these players seem like they're on a downward spiral. You just have to ask, can Dan Quinn get the most out of them? Is a natural regression in terms of ability, or have these players maybe in Debo's case has struggled with being motivated and he just needs to change the scenery? That's what we'll find out. But I could see a world where the Commanders do regress though and take a little bit of a step back, maybe kind of to the level like the Texans did, where like they're still in the playoff mix. They find a way in the playoffs, but they don't really take that next step to be a Super Bowl contender.
The funny thing about the Commanders too is, I think because of Jayden Daniels and rightfully so, because he was young and he was sensational last year. A lot of people look at the Commanders as a young up and coming team, but they're actually not. They're filled with guys either on the brink of 30 or over 30 that they rely on a lot. So they're not really this young and upcoming team. The fact that they have Jayden Daniels and they can build properly around him, which they probably can. But as of right now, they're not this young up and coming roster other than Jayden Daniels. They're not filled with stars in other places that are young.
No, they're not. But but Jaden Daniels does give him that chance to be a special team. But that team with Adam Peters, they got a lot of potential because they have years to come to continue to build that roster. But yeah, I agree. I mean, they're old. They got to continue to build the roster, and they're not there yet. Today, we'll save our predictions. We have all off season to talk about whether we think the Eagles will be in the Super Bowl or not. But from these talks, me and Bob both think that the Eagles are going to be really good this year. Whether they make the Super Bowl or not, you'll have to find out our thoughts on that later. But thanks for tuning in today for another episode of the No Huddle Show. Continue to check out our content on NJ.com. And we really appreciate you guys, and we'll check you out. We'll see you next time.